The Starship refused to move until Greg sat in the pilot's chair, and Greg was not exactly thrilled about it. "This is ridiculous," Greg muttered, staring at the vessel's sleek alien design. "I'm not even qualified to fly a bicycle, let alone whatever this is." Around him, the command deck of the Zarian Concorde's finest ship hummed with alien tension. The Zarian engineers, all six-armed and wide-eyed, flitted nervously about, their bluish skin slowly fading to a sickly gray, the universal Zarian shade of embarrassment. High Commander Vashtar, who had 6 more centuries of life than Greg and far less patience, looked ready to combust on the spot. "You will sit in the pilot's seat, Gregor of Earth," Vashtar hissed, his voice vibrating with unnatural resonance. "You are the anomaly. This vessel, crafted by our greatest minds, recognizes you as its pilot. We do not know why, and the Concorde does not accept failure. Sit." Greg sighed. The Zarians had a point. They were desperate. The Nebulan Exodus, a ship the size of a city and gleaming with tech so advanced that Greg could barely figure out how to open the door, was supposed to be the salvation of the Zarian fleet. It could bypass entire star systems, teleport through folded space, and probably make a mean grilled cheese. The only issue? It wouldn't budge. For 10 days now, Vashtar and his crew had burned through every theory their galaxy-spanning minds could conjure. Nothing worked. And then there was Greg, the human anomaly. Greg scratched the back of his neck and squinted at the pilot's chair in question. It didn't look like anything special, just a slick metallic seat with armrests surrounded by holographic controls that floated and swirled in the air. But the chair had reacted to Greg when he'd wandered onto the bridge 3 days ago, swiping a sandwich from one of the Zarian interns. The ship's engines had roared to life the moment he'd leaned against the chair to eat. Vashtar nearly fainted. Greg thought it had been a coincidence. Until today. "Human," Vashtar growled, drawing Greg's attention back. "Time is wasting. Enemy forces approach. This is not the hour for your species' antics." Greg shook his head. "It's not antics," he said defensively. "I'm just not comfortable being the galaxy's worst pilot." "You are the only pilot," Vashtar shot back. "Sit." Greg glanced at the Zarian bridge crew. Every single alien eye was locked on him, some of them clutching small devices, scanning him nervously for what Greg assumed was magic, genetic anomalies. Who even knew at this point? With a resigned sigh, he walked over to the chair and hesitated. The last time he touched it, the ship had started vibrating like it was about to hyper-jump itself into pieces. "This thing isn't going to blow up when I sit in it, right?" Greg asked over his shoulder. A Zarian technician squeaked and turned an even paler shade of gray. "Statistically unlikely," he mumbled. "Fantastic," Greg muttered. "Glad we're using math here." He lowered himself into the seat with all the grace of a man about to be launched into space without a helmet. The moment his backside hit the chair, the holographic controls came alive, pulsing, spinning, rearranging themselves into what Greg swore looked like English letters and Earth-based instruments. His breath caught. Vashtar," Greg whispered. "The ship's talking to me." The Zarian High Commander took a cautious step forward. "It what?" Greg pointed at the flashing controls. "It's asking for authentication in English. Says, welcome, Greg, and then it's asking for a launch command." I didn't even know the ship had a voice. The Zarian crew erupted in chatter, dozens of alien engineers barking orders and pulling data from floating screens. Vashtar silenced them with a sharp wave of his hand. "Human Gregor, what do you see?" "Describe it." Greg gestured toward the holograms. "Everything's turning into Earth stuff. The throttle looks like it belongs on a plane. And there's even, holy smokes, is that a steering wheel?" "A steering wheel?" Vashtar echoed in disbelief. "Yeah," Greg shrugged. "It's like a car. A space car." The command deck fell deathly silent. Vashtar's expression darkened as he turned to the Zarian engineers. "Is this possible? Has the ship reconfigured itself?" One of the technicians hesitated. "The Nebulan Exodus does respond to neural inputs," It may be adapting to the pilot's cognitive framework. Greg blinked. Are you saying the ship's dumbing itself down for me? No, the technician squeaked. Simplifying. Not dumbing. That's offensive, he added quickly. Offensive to both me and the ship, Greg said. Vashtar growled deep in his throat. Human, if the vessel is communicating with you, then speak to it. Give it the launch command. Greg glanced back at the holographic controls. Launch command? What, like, go? The ship's controls flashed bright blue, and a mechanical hum rolled through the deck. Warning alarms shrieked across the bridge as the massive vessel rumbled to life. The bridge was silent as Greg leaned back into the chair, his hands still trembling from the adrenaline surging through his veins. Around him, the Zarian crew cautiously rose from their scattered positions, their expressions a mixture of relief, shock, and awe. Outside the viewport, the stars sparkled serenely, as though mocking the chaos that had just unfolded within the ship. Vashtor, the Zarian High Commander, approached Greg slowly, his 6 arms folded tightly against his chest. His piercing gaze bore into Greg with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably in the chair. Human Gregor, Vashtor began, his voice unusually calm but laden with gravity. You have defied the odds twice now. Once may be luck. Twice suggests destiny. Greg groaned, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. Look, I don't know what you're expecting me to say. I didn't sign up for this. I'm just a guy trying not to die on a spaceship I barely understand. And yet, Vashtor countered, stepping closer, this vessel, the most advanced creation in known existence, responds to you, trusts you. It awakens to your presence, reshapes itself to your needs, and performs feats that our greatest minds deemed impossible. Greg threw up his hands in exasperation. Yeah, I got that part, thanks. But I still don't get why. What makes me so special? I'm just an average guy from Cleveland. I don't even like flying. Vashtor's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained serious. We do not fully understand it either. The Nebulan Exodus is ancient, beyond even our oldest records. It was not constructed by Zarian hands, but discovered, dormant and waiting. For centuries, we sought to awaken it, to understand its purpose. Yet it remained silent, rejecting every pilot, every attempt to command it. Until you, Greg leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees and his head in his hands. Great. So, what? I'm the chosen one now? Is that it? The fate of the galaxy on my shoulders? That's just perfect. The ship's voice chimed in his head, startling him. Pilot designation confirmed. Awaiting next directive. Greg let out a long, weary sigh. I don't even have a next directive, he muttered. Then, looking at Vashtor, he asked, what happens now? Do we just sit here until the Corps come back with more ships and finish the job? Vashtor straightened, his demeanor shifting back to that of a military leader. No, we cannot remain here. The Corps will return, and next time, they will not underestimate us. We must take the Nebulan Exodus back to the Concorde and inform the Council of what has transpired. Great, Greg said sarcastically. More people to tell me how unqualified I am. Vashtor ignored his tone. You misunderstand, Gregor. If what we have witnessed here today is any indication, you are not merely a pilot. You are the key to the Concorde's survival. With this ship, we may stand a chance against the enemies that threaten our existence. Greg stared at the glowing controls, the weight of Vashtor's words sinking in. He didn't want this responsibility. He didn't want to be a hero or a savior or whatever the Zarians seemed to think he was. He just wanted to go home, to his small, uncomplicated life. But deep down he knew that wasn't an option anymore. Not after everything he'd seen, everything he'd done. Fine, he said finally, his voice heavy with resignation. I'll help. But I'm telling you right now, I'm no leader, and I'm definitely no hero. I'm just Greg. Don't expect miracles. Vashtor's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Sometimes Gregor of Earth. It is the unlikeliest of individuals who perform the greatest miracles. Let us hope that the Nebulan Exodus has chosen wisely. Greg snorted, shaking his head. Yeah, well, let's hope it doesn't regret it. As the ship's hum grew louder, signaling its readiness to depart, Greg gripped the wheel once more. The stars outside the viewport seemed to glimmer with anticipation, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. All right, Greg muttered, bracing himself. Let's see where this crazy ride takes us next. And with that, the Nebulan Exodus roared to life, its engines glowing with a power that defied understanding as it carried Greg and the Zarian crew into the unknown.